This is Newday Saturday Edition, and the conversations will start very soon. But before then, let me introduce the panelists for today's discussion. On my left, I have Mr. Nana Komia. He is the Communications Director of the New Patriotic Party, NPP. Next to me on my right here is Mr. Kwame Jantwa. He is a senior member of the Convention People's Party, CPP, also the Vice Chair of PIAC, and a technical advisor to the Civil Society Forum on Oil and Gas. Next to him is Mr. Clement Apak. He is a presidential staffer and also the presidential candidate for NDC in the Bunza South constituency.
Hey, you gave me post for presidential candidate, parliamentary.
Sorry, parliamentary candidate. I'm very sorry about that.
The state of Bunza.
Yes. You're welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Great.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Jantwa.
Well.
Yes, I'm very fine, thank you. I hope you are well too.
By His grace.
Great. So we have a number of issues lined up. Obviously, the big one here, looking at the Montie trio saga and where it's gotten us to. The Supreme Court earlier on in the week sentenced them to a 4-month prison term and also fined them 10,000 Ghana cedis each. Now, this has come with very divided views about the sentencing. Some think it's harsh, others think it's perhaps not as adequate as they had expected. Others are also even questioning the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court to have heard this matter, saying that how could the Supreme Court be the complainant, the investigator, prosecutor, and ultimately the judge in this matter. Nana, I'll start with you.
Yeah, well,
your general take on it, and then we'll begin to narrow in on the various aspects.
Yes, thank you. Let me wish our audience a good morning. My voice is not too good this morning. I'm recovering from a sore throat. Now, this is a Montie FM thing. I don't know what else the Supreme Court could have done. This is a radio station that has been set up deliberately by the NDC to run down political opponents. There's no doubt about it.
But is that for certain?
Sorry?
Is that for certain?
Yes.
That's been set up by the NDC?
Yes, to run down political opponents. You know, there are various radio stations in this country. There are about 400 radio stations. Many of them, well, most of them, are regular radio stations run on private business lines and doing their business by the regular ethics of the profession, the broadcast profession. Some of them have been set up to support political parties, and they make no secret about it, and there's no problem with that. You have the Radio Gold, you have the Oman FMs, and a few others who have a bias towards political parties. There's no problem. Once you go largely within the ethics and the rules of broadcast, there's no problem. But the Montie FM has been set up to deliberately run down political opponents of the NDC. Now, you're asking me what the proof was. One of the owners of the station, called Mr. Harry Zakor, I think in November last year or so, came out and said that Montie FM was set up by himself because he thought other radio stations were broadcasting untruths that made the government unpopular. And so the Montie has been set up to also prosecute the same agenda.
He mentioned a particular radio station.
He mentioned a particular radio station. He mentioned Peace FM.
Yes.
Can you imagine? Peace FM. Peace FM broadcast that's the most popular local radio station in the country. If it was that biased, how would it have gotten all this listenership? But according to the vice chairman of the NDC, Peace FM was running down the government. So Montie has been set up to counter. And when you listen to the broadcasts, you have no doubt in your mind that this is the mandate of the radio station. The things that they say every day on a daily basis. And you know, we the NPP, we took them to the Media Commission. So in the process of going to the Media Commission, we recorded 1 full month of Montie FM's program. 1 full month. I wish I had brought them here. I would have read some of them too, on a daily basis. You know, the things that they say about political opponents every day. Nana Akufo-Addo, Baumia, myself, even non-political actors who they believe are on the side of the NPP. They ran down Kwame Sefakai, the footballer was his name. The footballer. Asamoah Gyan. And because they had said that Asamoah Gyan, they believed that Asamoah Gyan was a contributor to the NPP. And the way they ran down this gentleman, you know, I don't want to repeat some of the things. So it was clear from day one that this is a radio station with the agenda to run down political opponents of the NDC in this country. And they've been allowed to go on for so long. We have the Peace Council, the National Media Commission, the Ghana Journalists Association, the National Communications Authority, the Catholic bishops. Everybody has been sitting down watching this radio station go on the way that they have until they now tackled the Supreme Court of Ghana. And what was the scene of the Supreme Court? The Supreme Court hadn't even made a ruling against any political party. The Supreme Court had made rulings in cases brought against the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission, not the NDC, not the CP, not the NPP. And these people on Montie FM decided that ruling was not palatable to them. This is the immediate cause of this whole brouhaha. And when you listen to what they said against the courts, and you see, because of all the latest twists that these were people who were exercising free speech, I would take the trouble to read some of the things they said against the Supreme Court. So all of us will be clear in our minds if this was just the exercise of free speech. Because we've been told that you should not criminalize free speech.
Yes, we'll be going into that, yes.
What the people on Montie FM were engaged in was not free speech. What they were engaged in was an abuse of free speech. So the action by the Supreme Court was not against free speech. The action by the Supreme Court is to check the abuse of free speech. So all these later petitions that we've heard that the people were exercising free speech and the Supreme Court was trying to criminalize free speech cannot hold. The people were abusing free speech, and what the Supreme Court has done was seek to stop the abuse of free speech. And when I read to you what they said, you'll be in a better frame of mind to judge if these people were indeed engaged in free speech or they were engaged in abuse of free speech.
Because we had some of them,
yeah,
on the airwaves.
You know, on that day when the judgment came, one of the panelists, there he goes. If this country breaks up, those who cause it will start from their homes. God has also, I know all of them. I know their homes. I know where all the judges live in Accra here. I can show you. I know their quarters, the Supreme Court judges. I also know the High Court judges. Yes, I'm telling you, God has a way. And if they like, they should start something. It will start in their residences. I am telling you, in their neighborhoods. When we finish them, then we would end. Then we would come and rule the country, because they don't mean well for the country. So they should go. So we who have the country at heart, we would hold the country and rule the country. They should sit there and think because they are Supreme Court judges. So look, the Electoral Commission is insulated, Article 45 of the Constitution. Go and check. You cannot do what you are doing there. You, the Supreme Court judges, what are you doing for Ghana? Look at your judges taking bribes, goats, and 100 cedis, and you are not embarrassed. Senior judges like you, by this time, all of you should have resigned because of what your juniors were doing. You are not embarrassed. You sit there and you want to bring fighting in this country. We are youthful. We are youthful. We won't sit down for this country to be destroyed. Old men and women like you, square pegs in round holes. You are old. You are more than 70 years. You won't go home. You have brought some candidate from somewhere. He too, he's the oldest political candidate to be fielded in Ghana's election. I mean, is this free speech? Is this free speech? And then,
please, you'll be wrapping up on your first round of submission, and then I take the other views.
Then
we'll come back. Yes, we'll come back. Yes, you have the same time. Yes.
You see, even when the Supreme Court, from these initial remarks, when they issued the warrant, you would have thought that these people were genuinely concerned about their actions, and the Supreme Court has issued a warrant. You would have thought that they would have showed remorse. When the Supreme Court issued the warrant, the very next day, then the host of the program, he goes, now what have we done wrong? We have done nothing wrong. The Supreme Court can do nothing. We don't fear anybody in this country.
No, hold it there. I think we get the drift.
And so my question is, how is this free speech?
Very well. We'll try to answer that by the close of this session here. Dr. Park.
Yes.
Your general take on the issue.
Very well.
Yes.
Let me say good morning to my two colleagues, your good self.
Good morning.
And indeed, the viewers across the country, particularly those in Bulsa South. And to say that I am not here to defend the pronouncements. And I don't know anyone in government who has sought to defend the pronouncements for which the Montie tray were hauled before the Supreme Court, and criminal contempt charges preferred against them, upon which they were found guilty and sentenced. I think that we all agree that when that particular episode of the program came to public notice, almost all well-meaning Ghanaians spoke out against the content as, rightly re-enditioned by Nana Komia.
Is it a rendition?
Well, yeah, it's a rendition of it. Of course, they spoke in Twi, and he did it in English. So naturally, that is not the original text. That is not to say that he has embellished. It's possible, but I have not had the chance to review it. But be as it may, there was widespread condemnation. And that is what you expect in a society like ours. That even when people go overboard in terms of exercising the freedoms granted them by the Constitution in manners that are threatening or worrying to a segment of society or society in general, we should come out and condemn them. But having done that, and duly so, the court having exercised its jurisdiction in terms of its power to hold them before it and to hold them accountable for what they had said, it became obvious that they themselves had expressed considerable remorse. And indeed, their lawyers had pleaded profusely, as did many, many other Ghanaian citizens, including persons that ordinarily you would consider to be opponents of the party that the Montie tray were deemed to be sympathizers of. And therefore, when the sentence was rendered, it created a reasonable level of sadness, because people felt that after they had admitted and had shown remorse, after several other well-meaning Ghanaians had intervened on their behalf, perhaps they shouldn't have received the sentence that many consider to be harsh. So I think that the current discourse is not about the pronouncements they made and whether or not those pronouncements were threatening to the court and the judges. It wasn't about the pronouncements not having implications for the well-being of our society. We all admit that. They themselves admitted that. They apologized. They showed remorse. The issue now is about the nature of the judgment. And if indeed, after all of this, the 4 months incarceration and the 10,000 Ghana cedis fine, as well as the fines against the owners of the station and the frequency, was not excessive. And I think that is where we should situate it. But you see, I am not surprised. I mean, if you monitored Nana's narrative, it is very clear that the MPP had been waiting for an opportunity for Montie to be nailed. Obviously, it is clear that the MPP saw Montie FM as a thorn in their backside. And indeed, I listen to the program myself sometimes, and I fail to appreciate where he is coming from. But be as it may, if indeed that was the case, that Montie FM, as he claims, was set up to counter and to do the bidding of the NDC, and for that matter, it was being used to run down, quote unquote, that is the rhetoric coming from the MPP, run down. And they had a lot of other options. They themselves, as individuals, could have even gone beyond the National Media Commission to go to court.
Mr. Park, sorry to cut you, but on the issue about the objective of Montie being, put out there on the internet, you have all these articles going on about Harry Zakor, who is linked to the station. Indeed, that statement was made. So really, that issue is not one that is in dispute.
No, but to say that you are setting up a station to counter your political opponents is not synonymous to running the political opponent down. That is the point I'm trying to make. If that were the case, then what we should probably do is to go to the entity that gives the licensing, to look at the particulars on the basis of which the frequency was granted. It is only there and then that we can draw a definite conclusion as to the purpose for which Montie FM was set up. So that belongs to another realm of the argument. But the point I'm trying to make is that we should not mix apples and oranges. We are dealing with this issue on the basis of the fact that the court found them guilty and has sentenced them, a sentence that many believe is excessive. And that is where the debate should be. All of the other issues may have happened. I don't have any evidence or proof to that. But that is a whole separate ball game. And we shouldn't try to attach our political emotions to the current state of the conversation or discourse around the Montie tree, is the point I'm trying to make.
Very well. I'm just wondering how we would be able to decouple the judgment from the act, which led to the case in the first instance. It's a difficult...
The act for which they have been incarcerated is very clear. I mean, the judgment is there. But
we can't have a conversation and not refer to that, because if you're determining whether or not the judgment or the sentence was harsh, you need to have recourse to exactly what led to that. But again, on the judgment being, on the sentence being harsh, what would you think would have, what action would have justified a 4-month prison term?
No, that is not for me to decide.
No, but if we're able to say that it was harsh, perhaps we have a certain
the citizens have the right to express their opinion on all matters. Yes. Citizens have come up. In fact, some of them renowned lawyers. I'm sure you have heard about the likes of Professor Asare, Kweku Azan, as is popularly known. You've heard that Arthur Kennedy, who used to occupy the same position that Nana Komia occupies now, has also spoken. So there are other many well-meaning Ghanaian citizens who have expressed disquiet about even the process leading to the current judgment. So it's a debate that we need to have. But that is the beauty of democracy. We have every right to express our feelings in as far as those feelings and utterances are within the confines of the law. That is a right that nobody should try to take away from another citizen.
Exactly. Mr. Gentwa, Dr. Park and Nana have raised various issues here. And I'd like to have your take on those issues, if you have any issues to respond to in that regard. But also, I'd want you to look at the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court and why people are questioning that. Because clearly, I don't see any dispute about that or any issue about the Supreme Court's jurisdiction, because it's clearly given in the Constitution. The Supreme Court can exercise that right. So when issues about how could the Supreme Court have been its own complainant, prosecutor, investigator, and of course a judge in its own course comes up, I find it quite interesting. Perhaps there's something in there that we don't know about.
Abner, good morning.
Good morning again.
Good morning to my fellow panelists. Good morning to my flag bearer and good morning to the members of the CPP. Scandalous, reckless, and useless comments by these three. Scandalous, reckless, and useless comments by these three. So, you've given the three of us a platform here this morning. And because we feel, quote unquote, verticals beginning and close, we're entitled to be here. So it means we're entitled to say anything in any way about anybody. I'm not sure how many times you listen to Montie FM. Mr. Park, Honorable Park, indicates that sometimes he listens to it. It is not only for the cause of what they said about the judges that is important. What they've said about other important personalities in this country is what is important. Look, the first point of call for anybody to hold a certain position in this country is respect. Irrespective of who they are. Because if foreigners, if heads of states come into this country, these people, the flag bearer of the MPP, the flag bearer of the CPP, the flag bearer of the PNC, other important dignitaries are the ones you see sitting with these people. They must be some people. They must be people with some kind of credibility and integrity for them to be there. And then what do? Our own people, what do? We scandalize them by our words. And for me, if I had my own way, the judges should have given them 6 months, including
That's what I was
additional
asking
fine.
about the standard. When people are saying it was harsh, I'm asking what would have been...
What was harsh about it?
Yes.
What was harsh about
what
it?
What would have justified a 4-month term?
The law, if I'm quoting it right, the law is in the bosom of the judge. Yes? The Supreme Court is the highest court in the land. When the MPP took the elections to court, they took it to court because they had confidence in the Supreme Court.
Yep.
Now, if everybody is scandalizing the Supreme Court, who would want to go there? Nobody would go there, because we would have rendered it a useless court. And I think the judges have done the right thing. The right thing. The fact that you own a radio station does not mean you come and you talk anyhow. Democracy comes with responsibility. Everything you do in life has its responsible level. For me, there was an actor's rear and there was a mens rea. There was an act and there was an intention. What Nana Komia read, just listen to it. You go to their houses, we know your house. Such comments have caused war in other countries. Such comments have caused war in other countries. And this thing has been going on for far too long. The way Montie FM scandalized people. Because of what? Because of elections? Even if they were a station that even mixed it with building the country. What some of the things we can do to build the country? What are some of the things the government isn't doing to build the country? What are some of the things the opposition isn't doing to hold government accountable? Yes, we would commend them, but not this type of rhetoric. Now, I come to the Media Commission who give licenses. We need, and as Honorable Park said, we need to find out what was the criteria that was given to give Harris Akor the license. Was it because he was an NDC member? Was that the reason why? What were some of the things they took into consideration of giving them a license? And really and truly, there are some TV stations in this country and radio stations in this country where the owners monitor. And after, if you've been on their program and you said something untoward, they will call you and say, Mr. Jantua, the thing you said was wrong. Don't say it again, otherwise you don't come on my station anymore. Did Harris Akor say that? Did he even mention in court that over a series of programs, when they hear their guests castigating others, they have called him to say, don't run the station that way? How many times do they have meetings, the station, to see how it is running? How many times? And so for me, the fine was not even enough. They should have put Harris Akor and all inside too, so that they would learn. They would learn. The fact that you run a TV station or radio station does not mean you have the right to talk anyhow. I don't think that is right. And I think really and truly, it should be a lesson. You see, Sir John, during the
election
petition, didn't they castigate him? They held back, and we should have learned from it. And you see, Ghanaians have this thing about when something happens, the moment it happens and it goes away, we forget. We should have learned from that. And so when people say it's harsh, is harsh about what? What is harsh about it? And then you get NDC members going to the party headquarters to ask them to let the president grant them freedom. What has the president got to do with it? Because he has executive powers what has he got to do with it? They shouldn't bring the president in. And we shouldn't politicize this issue because they have done wrong. They've insulted, excuse me, it is not only the individuals they've insulted the office of the Supreme Court. That is the case.
And the judiciary.
And the judiciary. And you see, if anything at all, anybody bringing investment in to this country, one of the main criteria is to see whether they have an effective judiciary. In case there's any challenge or any problems, they know they can go to court and get justice. And if you scandalize it and you bastardize it and you use words, your own people are scandalizing your Supreme Court, which is an arm of government, then why should investors even decide to bring money into this country? And so they should have even gone on till Christmas, put them in till Christmas, so that they'll learn a lesson. And anyway, I hear in some corners that they were journalists. Were they journalists? And if they were journalists, what is the definition of a journalist? They should tell us. What is the definition of a journalist? Anybody who comes on radio feels, oh, I'm on radio, I'm on TV, so I'm a journalist. Let's define journalism. And let's see the merits and the merits and demerits, and also what regulates.
Exactly. Because this issue has brought in the question about how effective the self-regulation of the media has been. Because indeed, there's that opportunity for the media to self-regulate itself.
And we would have thought that after the Sir John incident, the Media Commission would now sit down and say, okay, what are some of the things we should put in place to make sure that things are done? And I also blame these two parties. I blame these two parties because the broadcasting bill hasn't been passed. The Freedom of Information bill hasn't been passed all these years. And when I say I blame these two, they have been in government all these years. Why haven't they done it?
But to what extent would those two even make any difference, given that we do have an NMC, a National Media Commission, yet these things are happening?
What do they do? Do we hear from them?
So that's what I'm talking about. It's not necessarily, I don't think it's about whether or not there is that system or a law to actually compel people to do things. It's just that we just flout the laws because the laws are there, but we just don't comply with them.
We don't have an effective way of enforcing laws in this country.
Exactly, and so we don't necessarily need to be constantly churning out laws because we do have.
But those two laws are very important, Abna.
Very well.
Very, very important.
Totally important. I agree with you. I will bring in Nana again, and then let me hear your take on, Mr. Apak. It's saying that yes, the act that led to this, we don't perhaps need to necessarily focus on it. Let's look at the judgment and moving on what issues are coming up from there. There's an issue about the presidential prerogative of power, of mercy, which some people are trying to get the president to exercise. Your take on that?
Well, you see, Apak talked about that free speech should be exercised within the confines of the law. You shouldn't criminalize free speech. Now, what is the law? It is against the law to scandalize the courts. That's one. It is against the law to threaten anybody with death. If you look into the law, threatening anybody with death comes with a 5-year sentence. You are a lawyer. So that threat of death alone against the judges should come with a 4 or 5 year sentence.
That is if you're found guilty of that.
The people pleaded guilty. Aside the first one, the scandalizing the courts, that should also come with additional sentence. So when you look at the law, the 4 months, the Supreme Court has been very lenient.
Lenient.
No, because you are looking at the law. What does the law say?
But you were busy begging for Sir John when his turn came up.
Yeah, but these people too, they begged. So it is not a matter of, that's why you got 4 months. In fact, the Supreme Court said that they've taken mitigation circumstances into consideration. Because the law on threatening death alone, when found guilty, if you're a lawyer, tell us. It's 4 years. So you threaten death against the judges, you scandalize the courts. I mean, here is one of them. And, you know, it is important that people, Ghanaians, appreciate the extent of the abuse that these people went to. Here's one of them. He's supposed to be the deputy minister, somebody who's being considered for a deputy ministerial position. It's called one Mr. Bless. Look at what he said. The Electoral Commission is an independent body. It's never happened before that today the Chief Justice sits. There's an agenda interfering in the duties of the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission should...
And this is reported where? What you're reading?
One of the panelists, Mr. Bless. This is what he said. This is what he said. The Electoral Commission should leave their work for the Supreme Court to run the elections. Why? Meddling in the affairs of the Supreme Court. And now there's a whole Chief Justice. At your level, you have children, you have grandchildren, and you sit there doing politics. Supreme Court appointed judges in bed with politicians, ruling to tie the hands of the Electoral Commission to prevent the elections. Are you not calling for war? Are you not calling for civil war? Are you not dividing the country? The court, which is the last resort of people who have lost hopes in the system, knowing that if you try all, you can rely on the Supreme Court for justice. Look, Chief Justice, we must watch them well. Then he was interrupted. He says, "Not. Do you know what happened in 2012 petition? This is not a Sunday school teacher issue. When you go to the Supreme Court, there's a worker who's a staff, who's a loggerhead with the Chief Justice over partisanship. You don't know? Let me give you one last filler. Do you know that?"
No. Yes, we can go on and on and
so
on.
I'm
But
saying
yes,
that, you see, this is scandalizing the court. It's a major crime. And then the death threats. So the death threats alone carry years before the scandalizing the court. So if you've been given 4 months, what is the basis of anybody saying that 4 months is excessive? Compared to what? Now they tell us that, this is free speech. And why would you give custodial sentence? I mean, once it's free speech, there shouldn't be prison. It should maybe a fine or something. But people have been put into jail for free speech in this country. And we didn't say anything. We didn't ask President to intervene, did we?
But it's good we distinguish between, because you earlier on said it, the free speech aspect of it and the assault on the courts, and which is what happened.
Yes.
And that's why.
Both of them.
Yes.
And I'm saying that when you say the 4 months is excessive, based on what? The law? Because the law on, even if you don't have a law on sentencing where it is conflict of scandalizing the court, you have a law on sentencing when it's a threat of death. You see? And the people admitted that, yes. Well, so when you say 4 months is too much, based on what? What are you basing it on? When you say that you should not go to prison for scandalizing the court or contempt of court, people have been committed to prison for contempt of court. Why didn't we at that time ask President Mahama to win freedom? Those people, are they not Ghanaians when they were being committed to court over contempt of courts? Why didn't we ask President Mahama at that time? Now you have a situation where I don't even know why these people want to put President Mahama into this wahala.
I will be. Let me turn that question to.
I was going to read
Dr.
to you what
Apan.
Mr. Lita, who was a stalwart, legal stalwart of the, has said about this matter. Said, why would you want to put the president under this pressure? Why would President Mahama want his name to go down in history? And in any case, it will not be sustainable. You just try and create a constitutional crisis.
Yes.
If you try and say you have prerogative of mercy, that's what the Constitution says. It's a discretionary power.
Right.
We know that the parameters under which you exercise discretionary power. And in terms of the prerogative of mercy from prison, talks about you shouldn't be arbitrary and
should be candid, fair.
Yes.
Now,
it's just for
if somebody's been in jail, health grounds, somebody's got a serious medical condition, or somebody's been in jail for quite a while, served about 2/3 of their sentence, and they've been on good behavior and so on. Which category does this Montie FM take? Where's the mercy in it? Are they sick? Are they suffering from some sickness and so on and so forth? Now, if the president bows to the pressure and somebody challenges the president's use of that discretion and say that that discretion has not been used properly, and goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court strikes down the president, then what are we doing to John Mahama, the president? What are we doing to constitutionalism in this country?
Very on that. Just hold your thought
because
there,
of your political agenda.
Dr. Park, this call for the president to intervene by the powers conferred on him under Article 72 to exercise his prerogative of mercy, what has been the general thinking about those pushing for that, and what are they seeking really? Is it well founded?
Very well. I think before I answer your substantive question, it's important that I restate where we are. You know, this attempt to try and flog a dead horse is not going to be helpful. We have all agreed that what they said, the context within which they said it, the timing of those statements are condemnable.
But if they are condemnable,
they have shown remorse.
Why are we even asking the president, putting the president in this situation?
But that is the beauty of democracy. We are a people from a variety of backgrounds, socially, economically, even politically. We express our views and opinions on important issues of the day and of the time.
Right.
And that is simply the beauty of our diversity. So if a segment of the population is convinced, based on its own criteria, perhaps recent history, going back to the electoral petition in 2012 and other sentencing related to matters to do with contempt, feel that what has been meted out to these three is excessive. I don't think you and I have any reason to question their judgment. It is their right to express what they feel. And if they truly believe that per the powers granted the various arms of our government, the judiciary, the executive, the legislature, there is a place where they can go to seek redress on the basis of the fact that they think that this judgment is harsh. Why should we fault them? It is their right to petition the president.
That is true, but
the president also has a choice to exercise that prerogative or not. It's really that simple. So I don't think that, this attempt to try and suggest that if the president were, and I use that because it's conditional, if the president were to agree with the many Ghanaians who are signing petitions, including known members of the MPP, Nyahu Tamaklo has signed, Arthur Kennedy has written in opposition to the severity of the judgment, their own renowned lawyer based in the US has also written questioning the processes and the procedure, and many other Ghanaians.
So if
they have a right,
yes, but is the
redress?
Yes, is a redress
via
in Article
powers
72
granted to the president by the Constitution, and the president also has the prerogative to decide how to respond to
very well.
their call on him.
You
it is really that simple.
Important issues.
And I think that the point I'm trying to make is that we must respect each other's constitutional rights. But to suggest that the potential of a constitutional crisis can emanate from powers exercised granted one by the Constitution, I don't see it. I don't get it that way.
Please hold that thought, don't lose it. But I just want to come back to the issue about other people's expressions on their judgment or the sentence. Those, you talk about Professor Asare, for instance, and others, they've written. Those are espousing perhaps their views on the need to relook or take a look again at the contempt, the law of contempt and all of that within our jurisprudence, but not to suggest that there is redress under Article 72. And that's what I'm trying to drive at.
Yeah,
because
but
there's a movement which is looking at letting or bringing in the president to intervene in this particular context. And then there's the other side, which is also saying that, well, perhaps it's about time we took a look at the area of contempt as contempt within our jurisprudence. Let's take a look at it again. Is there any place within our constitution or our democratic setup? Those kinds of things. So the two are quite
No, very well. I
different.
understand the point we are making, but they are also related. They are also related. And indeed, many of these opinions even came up, during the electoral petition and the matters to do with Sir John and the others and the Beshi and all of that.
Hold your thought there. We'll take a break.
No.
We'll take a break. We'll be coming back very shortly to continue the discussions.
You have the power to discuss the game. We have the network that gives you unlimited talk time. We give you free talk time on your third call. Just call 511 to subscribe to Vodafone 1, 2 free and enjoy unlimited talk time to Vodafone numbers or 5 minutes to other networks after every 2 calls you make. Third call ni free and bien communimu. Call 511 to subscribe to Vodafone 1, 2 free.
Vodafone, power to you.
Does your antiseptic liquid kill bacteria and provide protection against germs which can cause infection and illnesses? Dettol does. Dettol provides 10 times more protection versus other antiseptic liquid. Dettol is the #1 selling antiseptic liquid to protect from up to 100 illness-causing germs. So why take a risk with your loved ones?
Women are the neck of every nation's economy. They are the babysitters, the cleaners, the cooks, and event organizers of every home. 21st century woman is not just domestic, but also very industrial, striving to support the family and contribute to the growth of the nation at large. However, her contribution is mostly underemphasized, less appreciated, and sometimes unnoticed. Watch Ghana Women's Awards Diaries, the journeys of women in Ghana, daring the difference and impacting positively their struggles, achievements, and visions right here on this channel. Ghana Women's Awards, coming soon. This August on TV3 Blockbuster, big miracles
are now trapped in walls of ice 6 inches thick.
This is a monumental task as all eyes and efforts are focused on saving the whale.
Maybe he's hurt.
You can't go down there, it's too dangerous.
Contraband.
I'll give you 2 weeks. If not, I'm gonna come after the both of you. I'm coming for you.
Snow White and the Huntman.
It's my power. Mirror on the wall. Who is fairest of them all?
You are the fairest, but there is another destined to surpass my heart, and you shall live forever.
They change up.
Envy your life, man.
I envy yours.
I wish I had your life. We wish we had each other's lives. I was just trying to be nice. Oh
This August on TV3 Blockbuster, only on TV3. TV3, first in news, best in entertainment.
It's It's been 10 years of celebrating rich Ghanaian culture. We wouldn't be anywhere without you, our audience. This is why we bring you this special launch of Ghana's Most Beautiful Season 10 this Sunday at 2 p.m. Celebrate with us at Eburi Botanical Gardens as we outdoor our 10 selected beautiful ladies to represent their various regions. Come experience a beautiful display of culture from the Eastern region. Ghana's Most Beautiful, redefining beauty to promote national unity.
Ghana's Most Beautiful is brought to you by Sasso Insecticide Spraying Coil and supported by TV3, First in News, Best in Entertainment.
In this country, we do not have a national assets register. There's something like that. I can bet you that you go into many of the government establishments, they cannot give you a list of the government assets. People are using government assets. Some people are living in government bungalows. They've appropriated, or their grandfathers, lived in them, and they have stayed in, and nobody ever remembers anything.
Supported by 3FM 92.7 Accra.
Welcome back. This is Newday Saturday Edition, and we are looking at the Montie 3 saga, where we are at now on that matter. Supreme Court sentence and the whole issues coming out of that. Harsh sentence or not harsh sentence. Presidential pardon or an unfounded attempt to get the president to exercise his prerogative power of mercy. Mr. Park, you're on the floor.
Yes, I was trying to make
Park,
the point. Yes, Dr. Park. Yeah, I'm sure the people of Bulsa will be much happier now.
I know.
I've come a long way,
Exactly. I've come a long way. You too, you
deserve it.
You deserve it.
I was trying to make the point that there is a need for us to respect the opinions and positions of citizens. We may not necessarily agree with each other, but we all have the right to express what we feel, how we feel about it, and what avenues we believe are available within the context of the supreme law of the land for us to seek redress in the way we think is necessary on the basis of what motivates us. So if citizens are signing petitions, they are calling on the president to exercise his mandate as granted him by the Constitution, I really don't see anything wrong with that. It is their right, and they are exercising it. And let's respect them for also exercising their right.
Very well. Mr. Janswa, should the president exercise this if it comes to it?
There's a huge, for me, conflict between executive power and judicial power. Let me go to Article 72, where it talks about the prerogative of mercy. Maybe the people who are asking for the president to show mercy didn't go into the content of the law. And I'll read all three articles in there. It says, A, grant to a person convicted of an offense a pardon either free or subject to lawful conditions, or B, grant to a person a respite, either indefinite or for a specified period, from the execution of punishment imposed on him for an offense, or, and this is where the conflict is for me, substitute a less severe form of punishment for a punishment imposed on a person for an offense, or D, remit the whole or part of the punishment imposed on a person or of a penalty or forfeiture otherwise due to government on account of an offense. So, the Supreme Court has made their judgment and put these people in for 4 months. Does the executive power of the president have that judicial power to do that?
That's a very interesting issue against the background of the separation of powers we have.
Yes. Does it?
But yeah.
So for me, there's a conflict between this executive power and the judicial power. And these are the three arms of government. The judiciary is one, the executive is another, the legislature is another. So we should look at this clause closely, that the judges of the Supreme Court give an order out and it can be curtailed, or another judgment put in place of what the Supreme Court judges have said. And let's face it, I'm not sure whether the Council of State, because it says the president may acting in consultation with the Council of State. I'm not sure whether the Council of State have judges or ex-judges on there for them to actually look at a situation like this.
But the framers of the Constitution, in their wisdom, put this there, made these provisions.
And that's the key word.
And that's what we have.
And that's the key word, in their wisdom. In their wisdom. Is their wisdom applicable here? Is it applicable here? The fact that it's in their wisdom doesn't mean that what they put there is right.
But that's what we are bound by.
Yes,
we agreed to take this 1992 Constitution.
And that is why it can cause a constitutional crisis between judicial power and executive power. It has to be defined in such a way that this is clear to everybody whose power is what. And so really and truly, I really do not think, and let's face it, the president steps in for clemency because of some of the points that Nana made. What's the clemency issue here with this one? What's the clemency issue? I don't see the clemency issue in there. So why would we want to put pressure on the president to come in? What's the reason? What's the reason? I mean, why are people asking for Mugabe and co to be, taken out of jail? Why?
Like Dr. Park said, he believes the people are entitled to that right.
Which people?
Those in that movement looking for the president to intervene.
And so we are saying that they agree to what Mugabe and co have done. Look, if it so happened, and this is hypothetical, if it so happened that the utterances that they made now caused a third party to now act on those utterances, what would have happened? That the following day, we heard a judge was coming out of his house in his car and somebody came and shot him. And they caught this person. The person based his action on what he heard on Montie FM. What would have happened? So for me, I do not think the president should get involved in it. In fact, I expect him as president and head of state of this country to come out and say, I have no jurisdiction in this case whatsoever. If it so happens that the judiciary has found these people guilty, so be it, period. I shouldn't feel that they are going to lose votes because of this.
Yes, so now it's a political issue. Dr. Pat, before you come in, still on this issue, so I get a sense that you are questioning the place of the prerogative of mercy within our democratic state.
Yes.
And indeed, I think elsewhere in other jurisdictions, in order not to make this abused, there are certain guidelines specifically put out. In the United States, for instance, you have those.
Yes.
So then there's a process that you go through. So it's a very transparent process. Everybody knows how you went by making a decision as to pardon somebody. And I'd like to quote Lord Denning.
Yes.
And Lord Denning
is the master of...
Exactly.
Yes.
In his text, the Discipline of Law, he writes that the prerogative, and in this case the prerogative of mercy, is a discretionary power exercisable by the executive government for the public good. The law does not interfere with the proper exercise of the discretion by the executive, but it sets limits, and it can intervene if the discretion is exercised improperly or mistakenly. That is a fundamental principle of our Constitution. If that discretionary power be abused to the public detriment, such prerogative is exerted in an unconstitutional manner. So clearly, the caveat there is for the public good. So let's ask ourselves if pardoning these gentlemen will be for the public good.
But you see, I think that's the most serious thing about this all goes to show that, unfortunately, people do not understand the tenets of law in this country. And so because the president has the prerogative of mercy, the next thing we jump onto is mercy. And we have to get the intellectuals, those who know the ins and outs of the law, to explain these things to the ordinary man.
That's why it's worrying to see certain kinds of people at the forefront of this.
There.
And then, yes, you begin to question.
There. You get ministers of state signing a petition that, yes, they should release them. Release them for what? What's the public good there? What is the public good in releasing Mugabe? To come and give us more garbage? To come and give us more garbage? Or is it because his name is Mugabe? And you know, sometimes I was listening to a certain commentary on some of the radio stations. That yes, that is what Ghanaians like. When there's fire in the thing, it raises the temperature of the discussions, and it raises the station because they can get more advertising from that.
Mr. Jantua, you raised a very important point. I would want us to note it down. We'll come back to it, which is the issue about the demand and supply. People craving for certain things that the media perhaps are giving them. We'll come to that because it raises issues about the bigger context of the society and the values we have.
Exactly.
But Dr. Park, I see you.
Yes. Of course, you know, because of the nature of this case, we are all carrying our constitutions along.
Yes.
And whilst Mr. Jantua was reading, I was going through. But you see, my problem is this attempt to try and suggest the possibility of a constitutional crisis within the context of the president exercising this prerogative. The point is that this is not going to be the first time that a president has exercised the powers granted him under Article 72.
Not in this particular context.
But the point I'm trying to make is that
in this context.
Should he choose to exercise that, it is not a slap in the face of the judiciary. He is merely exercising what the Constitution itself has also granted.
So let me ask you.
So we must be able to segregate
and
respect the separation of powers. The framers of the Constitution, as he rightly pointed out,
did you say we respect the separation of powers?
Yes. In their own wisdom, granted each arm of our governance structure specific powers. And I just don't see why anyone would think that should he exercise that, it amounts to a slap in the face of the judiciary or is trying to interfere in the work of the judiciary. They are not the same.
Dr. Park,
people have been sentenced to death.
Please, Mr. Jantua, carry on.
And they have been granted
in the past.
Pardons.
In the past, what has been the duration of clemency? How long has it taken a president to give clemency to somebody in prison?
So you are saying that we need to then go back and look at precedent?
No,
that's what you are suggesting.
Yes,
it doesn't specify.
No, hang on, it doesn't specify.
It doesn't specify in the said article.
But there's always been, by convention, a duration that a president has used clemency.
You see, he says convention.
Now,
one could also argue that a new convention
can't be. Yes. Not with the content of the offense.
Mr. Jantua and Dr. Park, I think, yes, the thing is, you have a point, Mr. Jantua. Yes, the convention. But here is a constitution we have, and we are bound by it. Issues are coming up about the separation of powers and whether or not the exercise of this power would defeat that. Because, yes, it amounts to some interference in the judiciary's decision, which has raised issues. But again, let's also bring in...
It doesn't amount to an interference. They have finished their work.
But you are overturning it.
No.
They found the person guilty.
They finished their work.
They found the person guilty. And these people, Dr. Park,
they
just a minute.
Guilty and they are sentenced to death.
Just a minute. No.
And the president is able to pardon them.
They have not finished their work. If it so happens that the Supreme Court finds more things against them, they can bring them back and give them more, what do you call it?
Very well.
So they haven't finished their work.
Yes, so moving on, I'm looking at it. You raised a very important question here, Mr. Jantua, about the place of this power within our current dispensation, especially when one of the key driving principles of our constitution is the separation of powers.
Yes. Right.
Again, there are issues about the legislature and the executive. That whole business about a certain number of ministers being taken from parliament. You know, that's a long-standing issue we're dealing with. So yes, we cannot say we have it, and so that's what we are living with, and we won't change it. It's for us to decide that moving forward as a nation, do we still need to carry on with these sorts of provisions? And I think that's the debate we should be engaging in as a people moving forward. Yes, Nana Kumia.
It's a very simple matter. Look, Mr. Jantua says that people do not understand the tenets of the law. That is not true.
Majority of the people.
People understand very well what the law says. They know. People like Dr. Apak, they know. It's just that on political grounds, they are agitating. You understand? It's not because these people do not understand the law. They do. But on political grounds, they are agitating.
So we've made everything political.
Yes, this is what they've done. Look, one of their seasoned lawyers, Mr. what's his name? Leto. He says, however, in my humble view, the resort to the executive, the answer, in my humble view, is not a resort to executive intervention by the grant of pardon. Let us step back for a moment. What will be the effect, or at least the perception, of a grant of pardon? It will constitute a direct undermining of the judiciary. That's what one of your own people is also saying, Dr. Apak. Now, in this country, you remember there was the need, there was appeal was made against a decision of the Supreme Court. When an appeal is made, the numbers of the Supreme Court have to be added on. That's normal law.
Yeah.
If 8 people sit down and make a decision at the Supreme Court, and somebody appeals that decision, you have to add 1 or 2 to the numbers.
So it's an odd number.
When that happened in this country, 1 person was added. These NDC people, they shouted to the high heavens that this is the president undermining the judiciary and blah, 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 blah. And now, look at what they are calling for. Now, Dr. Apak asks a question that it is some segment of the population who have an opinion that this judgment is excessive, and they have the right to back their opinion by petitioning the president. And then you also ask the question, what is the public good? Because the exercise of the prerogative by the president should be in the public good. And Dr. Apak is, from this answer, is equating the public good to some people gathering signatures and petitioning the president. Now, what is he talking about? If Mr. Jantua goes out now, he can get 1 million signatures against the president interfering in this matter. If I go out now, I will get 1 million signatures against the president interfering. So in this case, what is the public good? Are you going to reduce law to people collecting signatures? Then everybody will collect a signature. Collecting signatures. Is that what we are going to reduce law in this country to? So the Supreme Court does something I don't like. I go to my hometown and collect 500 signatures. And then I go and tell them, look, this is against the public good. This is what they are inviting us to consider. Look, the government of the NDC, they've shown complete bad faith in this Montie matter. The Supreme Court even alluded to it. The criminal aspect of it should have been taken up by the Attorney General. I'm sure you agree, Nana. The criminal aspect. Then you got the BNI jumping in front of the police. And they then say that we've looked at the people. We don't think they can carry through what they had threatened. So on that basis, the BNI, and the BNI are not in charge of prosecutions. It's the police. And so they jump and say, we are investigating, and our investigation show that the people cannot carry through the threat. So there's no case. And the Attorney General's office also, the criminal aspect of the threat of death, the Attorney General also ignores that. So the Supreme Court is operating on the basis of scandalizing the courts. So the government had shown bad faith all through this matter. Okay? All through this matter. And so the President Mahama is being invited to intervene in this matter purely on political grounds. Why would you want to put the president into this bind? Why? Why do you want to do that? 3-4 months to elections. You know? So, Dr. Apak, you people, get away from this business that you are putting the president. And you have members of the executive, people that the president has appointed. They also signing petitions to the president. You know, and they say that's the public good because they have signed a petition. You know what? I'm sure if this thing was kept quiet, let the people go and serve 2 months, 3 months, 2.5 months. The president may come in and say, oh, I have remitted there. And I'm sure at that point, you know, but the people have barely spent 2 days and there's petition. Now, this business about the constitutional, Dr. Park is going on, the president has constitutional powers. He's been granted by the constitution. He's no
but you know it's true. It's obvious. It's there in Article 72.
Please, 2 seconds, Dr.
But you invited me.
2 seconds, Dr. Park. You mentioned my name several times in your submission. I didn't jump in.
Very well.
Please.
Very well.
Dr. Park. Now, Nana, listen. Who interprets the Constitution? Who interprets the Constitution? The Supreme Court. It is not the president. The president may take any action that he believes the Constitution gives to him. The Supreme Court can strike it down. You understand, Dr. Park? It's a very simple matter. Why are you dancing about it? If the president goes to do something and somebody challenges that action, somebody goes to the court and says, this exercise of mercy by the president is arbitrary and capricious. They will go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will strike it down. They will strike it down. And you know it. So why come to tell us here that the president has powers and so that's the end of the matter? That is not the end of the matter. And you know it. Don't come and say that idea to us here.
Okay, yes.
The question of the role of the Attorney General. They examined the case, didn't they? And what verdict did they come up with?
I think they were acting on the basis of the BNI report.
Yes.
Which pretty much cleared the three gentlemen.
Yes. That is why the NDC being in power and the MPP being in power, they haven't been able to split the two, Ministry of Justice and Attorney General's Department. I don't know what it is that is delaying that split, because it is worth it. And if the Ministry of Justice feels that a certain arm of government has been scandalized, it is their responsibility to make sure that they take these people to court. And really and truly, I hope when the CPP comes into power, we would do something about this, because I really don't understand why we still have the Attorney General's Department and Ministry of Justice as one ministry. And anyway, having that one ministry is even putting pressure on it, because even personnel alone for that ministry is becoming very difficult and challenging. And so let's look at that and make sure that at least we have a body or a ministry that is solely responsible for prosecuting some of these things, and not mix the Attorney General in. The Attorney General alone has so much on their plate to handle in the country. Great,
but let's take a look at Article 72, because you see, Dr. Apak's position is this, that yes, we may be saying all these things we're talking about, but this is what we have. Article 72 is very much alive in our Constitution and grants or confers on the President these powers. But I just want us to look at the framing of Article 72 and see if indeed the required checks and balances to ensure that the exercise of the discretionary power is not arbitrary is actually, it's tight in here. Because you see that the president is to act in consultation with the Council of State.
That's the check.
That's the check. Is that a good enough check?
I don't think it's a good enough check. I think there should be more than that.
Because then again, you have the Article 296 regulating the exercise of discretionary power. That should be fair and candid.
Yes.
And in certain instances, a constitutional instrument should be put out detailing how these are to be, that discretionary power is to be exercised. So looking at it, assuming that indeed the president were to act and he came out with a certain finding or a certain decision, would we be confident enough or say that, yes, indeed, this discretionary power of the prerogative of mercy was exercised within the remit of perhaps Article 296, as in requiring that it should be done fairly, candidly, and not arbitrarily, and all of that? I'm just wondering how tight this provision is against the background of 296.
Are you asking or are you asking?
No, you first, and then yes, we go on to Dr.
You see, the situation that would create would be people will look at it as a political decision than a decision of prerogative of mercy. Because really and truly, when you look at it, it looks as if it's tainted to one political party than the other. And if the president comes out now and says, yes, in consultation with the Council of State, I've decided to free them, you'll be looking at, a lot of people will feel that he's looking at votes.
And of course, the timing is an issue.
Yes, the timing is an issue. and really and truly, one of the questions they would ask themselves, if it so happened that the president was in this position, what would he say and what would he take? What were some of the decisions he would have made towards this? Would he have given them mercy? Would he have given them this prerogative of mercy? Would he have even gotten the Council of State to sit on this case at all? Really, I think at this point, and you see, that is why, for me, I prefer the Westminster type of government. I prefer the Westminster type of government because you have so many people speaking on behalf of the president, and the president who was voted into power by the people don't hear from him. I would have thought the president, being the president, should come out and say, I have no jurisdiction in this case. Forget it. I'm not going to give any mercy to anybody. Forget it.
But doesn't he have?
Well, he has, but he can choose,
not to exercise
because of the timing, because of the content, he can choose and says, I'm not going to sit on this thing. It's not, I have the prerogative, but I'm not going to apply the prerogative here.
Because anyway, it's a discretionary one. It's not mandatory.
Yes, end of case. If this were the Westminster system, the Prime Minister will come into Parliament. The opposition will question him. Are you going to use the prerogative of mercy for these people? And he would have to answer. And really and truly, yes, Nana Komni and others will say, oh, it is far gone and we cannot go back to it. But I think Ghana has got to a position where we have to look at the Westminster type of governance. And even former President Kufuor has indicated, and he has been in power for 8 years, he knows what has been there. I've never been in power. He has said that he feels Ghana needs a Westminster type of governance.
Boiling down to constitutional reforms.
Yes, because you have so many people talking on behalf of the president. So many people. And you don't hear from those people. Were they voted?
Dr. Prack is smiling. I want to hear you. What's making you smile?
Mr. Raising a lot more fundamental questions.
Yes.
And I believe that whilst we may agree that our system may not be perfect, I think day in and day out we are working to perfect it. And of course, we shouldn't forget that the processes of amending the Constitution are still ongoing. But be as it may, I still want to go back.
Where's that constitutional? Where is it today?
You know, it was held up in court for several months.
Has anybody said anything about it? You are the government in power.
Well,
You're supposed to advise the people where it's gone.
Please, yes, we'll come to that. But yes, Doc, please go on.
Very well. I just wanted to go back to Article 72 and then to speak to the question that you raised. Now, Mr. Jantua seems to think that the check provided under Article 72, in this case, acting in consultation with the Council of State, was not sufficient. And I think that it is sufficient. I mean, if you know the composition of the Council of State and the background of those who compose the Council of State, it is very clear that these are persons in society who have achieved and understand the dynamics of our society from various angles. So, for example, you have traditional rulers there, you have retired judges there, you have retired civil servants there, you even have retired electoral commissioners there. And some of them are actually elected, in addition to those appointed. So the very composition of the Council of State, in the wisdom of the framers, I think provides a sufficient check in as far as the exercise of this if you like, prerogative of mercy is concerned. I think the bigger issue, though,
is the president bound by what the Council of State decide? He's not bound by it.
Have I said that? We are talking about.
And that is the
problem. About checks.
And that's the problem.
No, but that is
because
that
it's
is
not
your doing. It's not my doing. It is what is in the Constitution.
Please.
And for lack of an alternative, this is what we have.
See, Dr. Park,
so we must work with what we have.
This is a rude intervention, but you see, there's a problem there. Ordinarily, there's some check on the president exercising one or the other power. And the Constitution says, in this particular instance, it must be done with the Council of State. The problem is this. When you look at the Constitution, there's so much interlocking that it makes the president much more powerful than the words in the Constitution may suggest. So here, the president is supposed to act on the advice of the Council of State. But when you go to the composition of the Council of State, Dr. Park. And I'm sure when you go, you will find that the president appoints several members of the Council of State. You understand? So it compromises the check. And it's not just the Council of State. All the powers of the president which are supposed to be exercised on the advice of some other body. You will find that when you go to that body that is supposed to provide a check, you will find that the president is appointing half that body. So in this case, where it is the Council of State that is supposed to provide some check, when you go to the composition of the Council of State, and I'm sure you'll be kind enough to read it to us, you will find out that about 1/3 of the Council of State, which is supposed to be the check, are people appointed by the president.
No, but I don't disagree with you. But the point I'm making is that this is what we have, and that is what we must use. I don't know of any other alternative.
We are talking about sufficient.
That is the point I'm making.
And so that we use what we have, but not to get to absurd outcomes.
Well, generally I agree. Yes, I agree with that. Certainly we shouldn't go into the realm of absurdity, but this is what we have. And we must use what is available to us.
Is it enough? That's the question.
No, but that's what I'm saying. That is a bigger debate.
This is what we have, yes.
That is a bigger debate that we can engage in at another time.
And I'm saying that when that very body that is supposed to be a check, 1/3 of that membership is appointed by the president, who they are supposed to check.
But you see, this is where I disagree with Nana. You have been in power for 8 years. It is the same constitution that you use.
We are not talking about who has been in power.
So,
exactly. So I think
we are talking about.
It shouldn't be made to look as though it is only under the NDC government.
How sufficient it is.
But nobody has said so. We are talking about how sufficient it is.
Very well. So clearly, there is a consensus here that the constitution needs some rework.
Tell him, I have never been in power.
You have said in the government that was in power.
The NPP has been in power, and
yes, exactly.
By virtue of you being a member of the NPP.
Please tell him, I have never been in power.
Very well. I think that argument will be held behind the scenes.
Very well,
yes.
very well.
But yes, Dr. Park.
You've held ministerial positions. So.
Exactly. You have said in the government.
I wonder why.
He said, I have been in power.
Very well.
Very well.
Your party has been in power.
Yes.
For 8 years.
I'm happy you correct.
Let's carry on.
Remember,
let's carry on.
I come from an academic background. I got the point.
But Dr. Park, a number of things have come pointing to the constitutional reforms. Where are we on the constitutional review agenda?
You know,
it's something that's very dear to my heart.
You know, the process.
You're not the only one.
The process was held up in court for several months. I think it was even in excess of 1 year, and I believe that the person who took that challenge to court is indeed the same Professor Asare that wrote in opposition to this current judgment, and indeed directly called on the president to activate his powers under Article 72. I went back to reread what he had written, and he had challenged the process because he felt that the president, who was superintending over the process, was an interested party, and therefore there was the conflict of interest. Now, the court has since ruled in favor of government, which is that the court dismissed the challenge that he had brought. And an announcement was made about the committee to oversee its implementation. So I'm aware that they are working assiduously, and at the right time, the right processes will be invoked. Remember that we are dealing with different categories. There are those clauses in the Constitution that are entrenched, and you know that to be able to deal with those, definitely there has to be a referendum. And all of these are processes.
An issue about how that article itself should be operationalized and effectuated.
Exactly. And Parliament has a role to play. So, it is not as simple as that. Although I feel that if not for the challenge, we would have made a lot more progress. But be as it may, we all respect the law, and if a citizen goes to challenge the process, it is only proper that we allow for that to be concluded before we move on.
Thank you. We need to wrap up on this discussion about the Montie tree.
Just a question.
And then we move on to the Gitmo.
When was this constitutional review? When did it start?
Several years ago. But
Several years ago. When did the national ID cards start? Several years ago. Where are we today on those two things? And when government won the case on the constitution, have you heard government say anything about where we are going next? even with this ID card thing that has caused so much wahala with the Electoral Commission, has government come out to say, we feel that this ID card is the only way forward? Where is it now? After all the money spent on it, they owe us a responsibility to let us know, because these are two documents that are so important to the governance of this country. By the way, I'd like to also apologize. I didn't mean, when I mentioned Mugabe, I didn't mean President Mugabe of Zimbabwe. Unfortunately, I don't know Mugabe's name, but that is what the host. Okay, that is what the host on Montie
He's notoriously
FM
known.
Is AKA Mugabe. I don't know why they call him Mugabe, because I don't think that Mugabe says the things that he says. Mumfa Jantum, put fire in. I don't think so. But
see,
anyway.
Well, there is this business about the constitutional review. There's a more fundamental issue, and it's got to do with the attitude of the NDC government. The NDC government has shown very clearly that it's not a government that acts in the best interest of the country, that it acts only in its own interest. That has been the governance profile of the NDC government.
But this review was initiated by the NDC government, wasn't it?
2 seconds. Let me show you. So the NDC comes into office in 2009. The country gets a grant of $3 million to undertake constitutional review. President Mills sets up the committee to collate views. This committee does nationwide consultation. When, including political parties and all kinds, they went across the country. When they finished, they submitted their reports to the government. When they submitted their report to the government, this is a report collating views expressed by Ghanaians across the country. So what do you do when you get a report? You subject it again to the same parties as to what can be adopted and move forward. That's what you do. Because to realize whatever reforms that have to be made, you need the cooperation of all the parties. These are constitutional amendments. You need 2/3 and all of that. But what did the government do? They, on their own, they publish a white paper as to what they would accept to move and what they would not accept. You see? You see the behavior and attitude of.
I really wish Nana wouldn't have gone there.
Very well. I mean, yes, you, Nana.
And I will need to take. Why I'm saying what I'm saying.
Dr. Park, Dr. Park, you come in, but let me bring in the views of the listeners and viewers. It's important that we bring in their views. This one says, Abna, if the President, Mr. John Mahama, pardons Montie 3, then he must pardon all the prisoners, because the Montie 3 are not more human beings than those over there. Some of those in there are innocent, but they are wrongly occupying themselves in prisons. That article can't work and must not work. This is Suglu Ibrahim from Wa East. And another one saying, I can guarantee freedom of speech, but I can't guarantee freedom after speech. We use freedom of speech as a leverage to peddle mischief and speak vulgar words against elders. Supreme Court has done a marvelous job. This is Spegler Jr. in Wa. Silas Owusu-Setra in Kumasi is saying they should have spent the Christmas in prison. That would have served them right. Secondly, the president should have to restrain himself from that emotional blackmail from the so-called NDC people. Mr. President would be undermining the Constitution, and it would be scandalous of Ghana if he blindly accepts that emotional blackmail. Michael in Amasaman says, kudos to the Supreme Court. Freedom of speech comes with responsibility. This sentence will serve as a deterrent to all of us. Good morning, Abna. My name is Prince from Tamale. I want to categorically state that I am neither NDC nor NPP, but I vote as a Ghanaian. My humble take on this Montie 3 is simple. The Supreme Court should have given each of the 3 2 years imprisonment instead of 4 months, so that will serve as a deterrent to such reckless and uncouth statements. Conscious and Impressive says, good morning. If truly what Nana was reading is really the actual comments from the Montie 3, then I think Supreme Court was even lenient on its ruling and they don't need any presidential pardon. I'll take the last one. Abna, I don't sympathize with Montie 3 at all because their comments were unnecessary and distasteful. The last time I listened to the station, an individual was the topic for discussion. This is JB in Latabio Kwashi. Okay, last one here from Abdul Majid in Tamale Central. It says, as a repeat of that, I can guarantee you freedom of speech, but that, so I would move on to the next one. Habna, I think free speech should be consistent with outright responsibility. Montie FM is not an ordinary radio station churning out information and entertaining the public. It is a media house designated to run down people of high repute, and they do it with impunity since they are backed by NDC heavyweights. This is KK of Isiama Nursing School inside Elembele. Thank you for your contributions. Please keep them coming through. We'll be reading them as we go. So we're done with the Montie 3 issues, and we'll be moving on to the next topic. And this is the Gitmo 2. The Gitmo 2 are back in the news. The Supreme Court earlier on in the week ordered the Attorney General to release their agreement that under which the 2 Gitmo former detainees were transferred to Ghana for resettlement. The Supreme Court ruled that there was nothing confidential about that agreement which would compromise the state security if it were made public. And so the AG is to forthwith make such agreements available to the lawyers of the plaintiffs. And also it was to be taken into evidence of the court. We'll be taking a look at the significance of this ruling and moving forward, and how this Gitmo 2 situation is being dealt with. But before we begin discussing that, I'll take some more comments from the viewers and listeners. This one says, this set in Hawaii says, another calls emanating from NDC pressuring President John Mahama to pardon the incarcerated Montie FM contemnors with his executive power enshrined in the Constitution will be an attack on the independence of the Supreme Court, and also open the floodgates for recalcitrant persons to render independent institutions with vulgar threats. Good morning, Abna. Sometimes I'm a bit surprised at our politicians. As much as we condemn the things said by the Montie FM 3, look at how our airwaves are flooded with unspeakable things. Politicians are saying things on air, and that is okay. God is watching us all. This is Aram in a Denta news site. And another one says, Madam, I hope Kennedy, Japan, and Oman FM are listening and following what's going on. I'm not a prophet, but I'm very sure Oman FM and Kennedy will be the next, and I hope Nana Komia will speak the same when it happens. This is Prosper from Latabia Okoshi. Lastly, it says, Abna, good morning to you and your panelists. We have a duty to promote responsible speech whilst upholding freedom of expression. Both are very necessary, but I wish a non-custodial sentence had been preferred on the guys, given the political undertones this case has to its merit, and also not making unnecessary heroes of these guys, as it's currently portrayed with the candlelight vigils and protests held in their honor. This is Mensa Thompson. Okay.
We didn't talk about the value system. We didn't talk about the advertising.
We couldn't.
You know.
But yes, perhaps we'll have another opportunity some other time.
Very necessary.
It's very, very necessary. I do agree. So we're moving on to the Gitmo 2 situation. Now, you do recall that back in February this year, there was a suit filed in the Supreme Court, and the plaintiffs in there were seeking, among other reliefs, a declaration that on a true and proper interpretation of Article 75 of the 1992 Constitution, the President, when he agreed to the transfer of the 2 former Gitmo detainees without the requisite approval of Parliament, either by an Act of Parliament or a resolution of Parliament of more than half of the members of Parliament, acted unconstitutionally. Now, the suit has traveled to this point, and we have the Supreme Court ordering that the AG should make available that agreement to the lawyers of the plaintiffs, and also, of course, to have attended in evidence of the court. The whole argument was that that agreement was confidential, and if it's put out there, it could compromise the security of the state. That was the argument of the AGs. And then to counter that, the plaintiffs were of opinion that there was nothing confidential about it, and so it should be disclosed. So this is where we are on that matter. Dr. Apak, I'll start with you here. What is the significance of this ruling for the production of the agreement to the...
Very well. I think that this is yet another example of the fact that we have a functioning democratic system of governance. Quite clearly, we all understood the context and the conditions from where I sit, on which those 2 asylum seekers were received with the hope that, you know, they will be able
they
to.
asylum seekers?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look at the narrative, where they came from, the context within which they came, the fact that that was being granted them by our country was something that was being granted to others from the same background to different parts of the world. So it wasn't as though it was only Ghana which chose to receive Guantanamo Bay detainees.
Can you class them as asylum seekers? Did you
what are they here for?
Clearly, well,
from what,
I mean, if we have received them,
from what
they're not asylum seekers. They are, yes.
From what I understand, an asylum seeker to be is somebody who is probably tortured or going through some challenge.
We know that is exactly what happened at Guantanamo Bay.
Wait, some challenge in their country, and they have decided to come out of that country to get in another country.
Mr. Jantua.
This one was an agreement between the President of America and the President of Ghana. So where's the asylum seeker bit you're talking about?
You understand fully well the conditions under which some citizens were detained in Guantanamo Bay. It is very clear that not every single person who was taken there was proven guilty of the allegations or suspicions based on which that person was taken there.
Were they ever even tried?
And it is also being very clear that these were people whose rights, by all intents and purposes, were violated.
So take them back to their country.
Mr. Jatra, we'll come to that.
Ghana is a member of the international community.
If they have done nothing wrong,
well, that is a whole different argument.
You were looking at the significance of that ruling.
You may have your disagreement.
Into all of that,
you may have your disagreement.
For now,
but
the significance
what I wanted to put on the table was the context. You may disagree with me. That is fair.
I mean, lots of
that is why we are here. We are not here to agree. We can disagree, and we all share our opinion.
Sure.
But be as it may, you know, the reasons for which the two citizens went to court are well known, and as a government that respects the courts and always seeks to do what is right in as far as the laws of this land are concerned. Once the justices have been able to, from what I know, look at the documentation in camera, so to speak, and the conclusion is that that information should be shared with the legal representatives of the plaintiffs. I believe that is what is going to happen. But I think in the bigger frame of things, this again shows that our institutions do indeed work. And rightly so, we must respect the institutions that we ourselves have put in place to guide us and to interpret what we do within the proper context. So I don't see any other significance other than reasserting the fact that indeed we have institutions that work, and we as a people must always make room to respect the functionality of those institutions.
Very well.
How about the Montie 3?
I didn't want to go there. I knew, I didn't want to resuscitate that. Yes, again,
and
what Nana Komia is saying is, then respect
the president has the prerogative, and that Article 72 is part of the institution.
Great. So let's not even open that can of worms again. Mr. Jantua, please.
The Attorney General has indicated that the revealing of this document in being ordered by the Supreme Court flies in the face of Article 135 of the Constitution. Now my question is, how does a note verbal, which is meant to use as only evidence and not to be printed to the general public, fly in the face of Article 135 of the Constitution? Now, what does Article 135 say? It says production of official documents in court. 135(1). The Supreme Court shall have exclusive jurisdiction to determine whether an official document shall not be produced in court because its production or the disclosure of its contents will be prejudicial to the security of the state or will be injurious to the public interest. How does it do that? It's not verbal. Now, what I will expect the Supreme Court to do now, in order to make sure that...
Let's not go into any sub judice.
I'm not going into sub judice at all.
Just sounding a caution
yes,
there.
I'm just saying what I'll expect is that they should bring a proviso out that any of the members in this case, when this document is exposed to them, if by any chance it's leaked into the media, the public domain, they would be held responsible.
I think that, yes, that is
I think
I expect them to do that and to say that, so that it curtails, because knowing our journalists, they will try as much as possible to fish. And knowing, inverted commas begin and close, some of the people who represent people in these cases, some of this information can be leaked. And so I feel the Supreme Court has the right, in order to make sure that the verdict they come out with has the right evidence that supports that verdict, they have the right to ask for that document. Now, the other question is that the president, according to, is it Article 75, Article 75, execution of treaties. The president may execute 75(1). The president may execute or cause to be executed treaties, agreements, or conventions in the name of Ghana. 2. A treaty, agreement, or convention executed by or under the authority of the president shall be subject to ratification by Act of Parliament or a resolution of Parliament supported by the votes of more than 1/2 of all the members of Parliament. Can this be classed as an execution of a treaty?
I think that's the crux of the matter.
Yes, and if it can be charged as execution of a treaty, then the president has gone against the Constitution. Because according to the Constitution, before he took over this particular detainees, he should have gone to Parliament for it. But some would argue that he has the right. But this right covers everybody if it so happens, and if it so happened that mayhem had befallen this country from terrorists. Well, let's give it to the president. In terms of that, he came and he said to us that he doesn't think bringing the Gitmo 2 into Ghana would cause any terrorist threat. However, it did cause panic. It did cause panic. And was that deserving of Ghanaians? Was it right for Ghanaians to panic on the 2 coming into this country? I think that for such things in future, there should be an open discussion. Because really and truly, and I keep saying this, the president does not go into Flagstaff House on his own. It's the people who vote the president in there to serve. And yes, there are certain issues that can cause constitutional challenges or national security challenges. But there's ways and means of discussing issues that, can cause national security challenges. And I think the people have the right to know, especially with this kind of Gitmo 2 thing, and especially with the way terrorism is spreading throughout the world. At the present moment, nowhere is safe in the world. Nowhere is safe. If you realize and if you hear what is going on in Europe today, nowhere is safe. France, at any given time, there's a bomb here, a bomb there. Belgium, Germany, maybe the only place they haven't been able to go is the UK because of the channel. Yeah, well. But they would go there. And if they feel, and look at what Boko Haram, I was reading yesterday, some of the violence that Boko Haram is perpetrating in Nigeria. And if they are allowed to spread their wings and they link up with all these other terrorist groups, the world is not a safe place. And so with such decisions, I believe going forward, we should try as much as possible to have an open discussion. Ghana, we are lucky, we have an open media. We have a media where people can express their views, not like the Montie 2 or the Montie 3, but they can express their views as to how they feel certain things going on in the country. So
right.
I would suggest that in such situations, we should try as much as possible to make sure that the president does or takes decisions that also would help the people to feel safe.
Very well. I mean, the reference of the AG to Article 135 and the fact that the order flies in the face of that, it's quite interesting, because how else was the Supreme Court to make a determination of the nature of the agreement if it didn't have the benefit of an in-camera examination? Because that is essentially what the plaintiffs are looking at. They are challenging the president's action based on Article 75, which required, if indeed that agreement is in the nature of that contemplated under Article 75, then it should have been subjected to parliamentary approval, either by way of an enactment or a resolution. So clearly, well, those issues are there. But we have the courts ordering that the AG should make this disclosure. Nana, your take on this?
Thank you, Nana. It's a very simple matter. I mean, this matter goes to show the record of the NDC, President Mahama's government, that they don't believe in accountability, they don't believe in transparency. And it's more shocking if you realize that these NDC people, they have actually written into their constitution probity, accountability, blah, 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 blah. And yet, they don't know what probity is. They don't know what is accountability. They don't know what is transparency. And I'll give you several examples of their behavior that shows that these people do not understand what is transparency and accountability. Let me start with this Gitmo matter. Look, when this matter came, it was done on the blind side of everybody. Only President Mahama took the decision. Indeed, his own cabinet were not aware of the full details. The National Security Council, which advises the president on security matters, was not fully aware of the details. The Parliament of Ghana, which is supposed to ratify intergovernment treaties, was not aware of the details. Even Obama in America, where the Gitmo people were, Obama took the matter to his parliament. President Mahama did not take the matter to his parliament. He did not take the matter to the cabinet. He did not take the matter to the National Security Council.
Not to the people.
You see? You see? Beyond the Gitmo, this government, look, GNPC is going to take a loan that will be guaranteed by the people of Ghana. Bring it to Parliament so the people of Ghana know the terms of the loan. They won't do it. And President Mahama and his government look on. A Great Development Bank, another public bank, they want to float shares. Bring it to Parliament so the people of Ghana know what their bank is getting into. They won't bring it to Parliament. And President Mahama is looking. Bars branding. Publish the report so the people of Ghana will know who and who are doing what with the people's money. They won't bring it. They won't publish it. He had to take the court action. Car power, the energy, electricity generator. They won't bring it to Parliament. If you bring it to Parliament, what do you lose? What are you hiding? Are you hiding something? So you won't bring Gitmo to Parliament. You won't bring GNPC loans to Parliament. You won't bring ADB. You have to take the courts to be ordering you to do what is proper. Why? Dr. Park, why does your government behave in this manner? Why can't you be transparent over matters that the public has an interest in? What do you lose? What would you have lost if you had allowed GNPC to bring their loan agreements to Parliament? Because those loans are guaranteed by the people of Ghana. So why shouldn't the people know the terms and conditions? What do you lose? In fact, you look better in terms of your governance.
But speaking on the Gitmo issue specifically, I think that the argument on the other side has been that the president was exercising his executive powers. And within that remit, he could have gone into that kind of arrangement.
But the courts of Ghana, who interpret those executive powers, they've asked you to publish it, to bring it.
Yes, to be not for them to examine it and then use it to determine the matter pending before them, which is so we are yet to find out whether or not it required that parliamentary.
I'm saying that. Why do you need the courts to order you, to be giving you orders? Why?
But perhaps their position is that it didn't require that parliamentary
rightly so
examination, either by way of a ratification by an act of parliament or a resolution of more than one half of.
Their position is that it doesn't require. Their position. Okay, that's the way they see it. So if you took it to Parliament, just to be doubly sure. Look, there have been incidents in this country.
But if they think it doesn't require that, why take it in the first place?
Listen, there have been
Dana is now the chief advisor to the NDC. Very well.
He's a citizen of Ghana.
I'm a citizen of Ghana.
Yes,
okay?
Of Ghana.
Dr. Park, I'm a citizen of
Ghana. I'm fully aware of
that.
Now,
Abina. So you believe you shouldn't take it to Parliament. But if you took it to Parliament so that there's greater transparency, there's greater buy-in, what do you lose? Especially when there's agitation that you should take it to Parliament. So you go extra, even if you
but
believe
the agitation
so.
came after the fact, and that would have, assuming it went to Parliament and Parliament said, okay, take it back.
You are taking decision over Gitmo detainees that has national security implications and all of that. You wouldn't take it to the National Security Council to discuss. You wouldn't take it to your own cabinet. Because you have members of cabinet who have come out to say they didn't know the details. You have members of the National Security Council who have come out to say they didn't know the details. So obviously, the cabinet itself was kept in the dark. The National Security Council was kept in the dark. The Parliament was kept in the dark. What do you lose if we know the details? You see, it gives the impression that you have something to hide. That's the problem. And so now it's taking the courts to be giving you orders. You see, the court gave you an order on the bus branding. Why? Why? Why did he have to take the courts to order you to release the reports of the Attorney General on the bus brand? Why? Is there some overriding national security implications in the report of the Attorney General? Abena, have you asked yourself that question? The bus branding, 3.5 million Ghana cedis matter. Publish it. So everybody will know that the government is taking the correct steps. You won't publish it. It took the courts. So I remember President Kufuor. You know this, the hotel.
Wow.
No, the other one. Mervyn Pick.
Mervyn Pick.
Yeah. The Mervyn Pick agreement. It was a business agreement. But President Kufuor brought it to Parliament. There was talk. In fact, even the NDC at that time thought that it shouldn't come to Parliament. President Kufuor said, look, we want to give the people double assurance. That all the people who should know about this deal know about it. So he brought the Mervyn Pick agreement to Parliament. You see, we're talking about transparency. We're talking about probity. We're talking about opening up to the people. When the people give you the mandate, you're supposed to exercise the mandate with them, not against them, not over them, but with them. And the only way you can do that is by being transparent over public matters. So there's a talk about public monies being used wrongly in bus branding. You appoint the Attorney General to go into the matter. The Attorney General goes into the matter. It's a matter of public interest. The government publishes on small paper and then you take subsequent actions. The people don't know if you are taking the right actions, if you are acting in the public interest. So you publish the report so they know.
So it's published.
Please be wrapping up and then
point is that it has been published.
After the court.
Same as published.
Same as Gitmo. The court is ordering. Why?
Dr. Park.
Well, I mean, it's quite obvious that Nana Komia was going to try and take advantage of this to, recount what has become the mantra of the MPP. The fact remains that...
Please.
What have I said?
I'm not taking advantage. Please.
We're speaking about Gitmo. You've gone all the way to Bas Brandon to...
Yeah, because I'm making the point.
I think he was talking about transparency and all. He took, yes.
If we are to speak about transparency and accountability,
you have a litany of examples.
We have so many examples.
But if you disagree, if you disagree,
I disagree with you.
Yes, but don't say that. Don't ascribe motives to me.
Oh, but of course, your motive is very clear.
Very well.
And are you allowing him to ascribe motives? Should I also ascribe motives to him?
We don't want to do that here. We don't want to do that here. So
please don't do that.
The point I want to make is this. We are running a system. We have a government. Certain actions are taken informed by specific decisions. Now, it is not as though somebody sits there and decides that I want to intentionally do this as a basis of keeping or withholding information from the people. But even when citizens feel that the information provided is not sufficient and they invoke their rights to get more information, I don't see why that should be used as a basis to draw conclusions about our government not being accountable and transparent.
So I think the first thing has to do with the fact that was the government mandated by law perhaps to do that?
That's the point.
And did they fail?
And
so
I mean,
why?
We go back to the original issue, which is the Gitmo 2. And you said very clearly that indeed there was reasonable basis for the president to have done this on his own.
Which basis was?
Is it your turn yet?
No, I'm asking. I want to find out.
What I said was that was the argument of the other side. Not necessarily to say that I buy into that.
No.
But yes.
But be as it may, that has been done. And of course, some citizens felt that they had reasonable cause to probe and to seek more information. And they have exercised their right. It's really that simple. I don't think we should beat about the bush and try to build an anthill out of a molehill.
Really? Are we building?
Perhaps it shouldn't have gotten to this point. Because if the president had revealed to us the reasoning behind it, it's not the Supreme Court who are to order you to bring the bill. And even these people who had taken this case to court would not have even gone to court. Now, we're talking about the openness of such issues that can affect everybody in the country. It can affect everybody in the country because if it so happened that, and I said earlier, the terrorists decided to descend on Ghana, they will descend on Ghana. And it's not the president they will shoot. They will start from somewhere in the north or somewhere you don't even expect. And the next thing you see, there's mayhem in the country. So my point is that with such situations, have a debate. Bring it out. Bring it to Parliament. Tell Parliament this is what we have received from the United States of America, that they want us to take 2 detainees. The people in Parliament represent Ghanaians in their constituencies. Let parliamentarians go back to their constituencies and say, this is what the executive have brought to us. What is your think on it? What is your take on it? Let them come back to Parliament to report, and let's have a balanced discussion. So that if the people say, well, from the facts that you've given us, from the evidence that you've given us, they don't pose a threat, and because Ghanaians are hospitable and, humanitarian, yes, bring them in, then so be it. But you see, it's making the the individual of the president, and when I talk of the president, I'm not talking about the individual John Mahama. I'm talking about the office. Although, yes, you have executive power, there are certain things that you have to be discretionary in using that executive power. And it makes that office look as if, as Nana Komia also said, you're hiding something. Did the American government promise Ghana something for taking the Gitmo 2? And if it so happened that we didn't take them, what would have been the result of America probably aiding Ghana or doing things, you know, for Ghana? So I think that for such situations, we should open up. Government should be more transparent, because if it so happened that any mayhem caused in this country, boy, the president would have all the security supporting him and protecting him. And even they could take the president and go hide him somewhere. What about you and I? What about you and I? When we know the police of today do not have, yes, and they have been giving quite a lot of equipment, but they do not have adequate equipment to protect everybody in Ghana.
Mr. Jantua, it was very clear that these two never pose any security risk. That was made very clear.
Yes, that is why I'm saying.
When the president
that is why I said earlier that the president has been vindicated so far, because nothing untoward has happened. And it looks as if the Gitmo 2 have blended into our society. But I don't know. Are they still in protective custody? Are they still living on the compounds of national security? Where are they today? Nobody seems to be reporting about what is happening to the Gitmo 2. Are we still financing them? How are we looking after these two? I think there should, at least to Parliament.
So all those information were kept out of the public domain, ostensibly because, according to the AGs, if such information was put out there, it would compromise the security of the state. And now we have this ruling coming out to say that, well, there's nothing in there that compromises the state security if this document is made available to the public or put out there necessarily. So that argument of the AG.
You see, Abna, this is where, the dichotomy is. Once this document is sent to the Supreme Court, and it turns out that what the Attorney General said to us then is not true. What does that make the Attorney General? And it is the office of the Attorney General.
We shouldn't be making assumptions.
It's not assumption.
This is
they made a statement.
A live case.
They made a statement.
It's a live case, yes.
But
we do know
they made a statement.
You might be cited for contempt.
That's why I earlier said let's be careful about the subjudication issues here.
The Attorney General indicated at the time that if we expose
before the matter went to court.
Yes, before it went to court. If we expose it, it will be there will be a national security. It's a national security issue. And I'm saying, if it turns out that in the exposure, in the opening up of this evidence, it is shown that really and truly there's no national security issue in there, what does that make the office of the Attorney General? How do people now see it? How do people build confidence in that office to make sure that whatever they say is sacrosanct and is true?
I get your point, but what I'm saying is that you are making assumptions.
Well, my assumptions can turn out to be true.
Well, very well. Let me take in some comments from the viewers and listeners. There's a collection of signatures that we can get millions of signatures for Atta Ayi to be released. I think Ghana will be good and our democracy will be good if Mugabe, not the Zimbabwean president, is allowed to serve the 4-month jail term. This is Zion Inwa. Good morning, Abna. I greet your senior man, Nana Komia. Mr. Jantua is a very good person since I started watching this program. Nana Jantua, please come to NPP. This is Aliu Sebele from Bully in the Upper West.
And genetically CPP.
You see, you cannot defend what is undefendable or indefensible. When Ghanaians required to know the details of the coming of the Gitmo 2, these NDC people and government communicators came out and opposed that vehemently. The country has been entrusted in the hands of the presidency, meaning any decision taken on behalf of the country must have the majority consent of the people. If they are not threats to all, why did America, of all the most sophisticated security, not take them back to the US? Mm-hmm. And what did the country exchange this big security threat with? Politicians should have in mind it is the citizenry that makes them, and we can unmake them at any point in time. Good morning, Madam. It says, in fact, we are waiting for the president to pardon the Montie 3 so that it will make our campaign much easier. This is Otabel in Fadama. I think if the courts don't want to, I can't read that, unfortunately. This is Farouk in Tamale. He says, good morning to you, Abna, and your panel members, especially senior comrade Dr. Apak. In fact, it is profoundly troubling when you have Supreme Court justices. I'm sorry, I can't read this. Good morning, Abna. I'm watching from my small corner in Ifekuma, and I will say,
wow,
it's say that the NDC is shooting itself in the foot and pushing themselves slowly to opposition with this Montie FM thing in the Article 72 bit. This one says, Nana Komia is being political in all his submissions. He and his NPP are equally guilty of everything that he's saying. Then the NPP thinks they have to do politics with everything in this country. That I think is unfortunate and out of place. This is Alex Dapila in Kumasi. From Mankama in Wa, he says, to the best of my knowledge and my bid to, I'm not getting this, sorry. Good morning, Abna. I'm totally surprised about the NPP and its surrogates. We're all in this country when an MP declared war and called for the elimination of certain tribes. Nana Komia and his people poured out on the streets to demand his immediate release when he was taken to court. And he also did that. Now I would like to ask Mr. Komia, Mr. Jantua, and the Supreme Justices whether they were not in the country when Kennedy Japan called for the elimination of more than half of Ghanaians because they don't believe in the NPP. Well, those are comments coming in from viewers and listeners.
That
we
last
appreciate
point
that
is interesting.
want to.
It's a very bad, it's all born out of ignorance.
Which one?
This
bit about the Kennedy.
Listen.
Where's the ignorance? Which side is the ignorance?
2 seconds. You see, Kennedy Japan, when he made comments that were thought to be inciting, was arrested. Nobody stopped the arrest. Nobody. In fact, the government broke the law because the government kept him more than 48 hours without a court order. That is what provoked the reaction of his supporters. That's what provoked the reaction of his supporters. The government itself cannot abide by the simple requirements of the law that you cannot keep a suspect beyond 48 hours. So you go and arrest Kennedy Japan, the comments he made, you said were insightful and all of that.
So you're saying it was, you poured out onto the street because of his overdue stay in that, and not because you were doing that in solidarity with
that's exactly what. But the police also have the right to keep a person over 48 hours if they find that they need extra time to get more evidence.
No.
But you need to.
Abna is a lawyer.
Yes, but Mr. Jantua is as well.
It's not true.
You need to, that 48-hour rule should be applied, really. You can't go beyond that.
That 48 hours should be applied. It's not subject to what the police want. What are you telling us, Mr. Jantua?
No, but
what are you telling us?
There is that aspect of it, but then you need to comply first with that. Yes.
Absolutely.
No, but it's not true that the acts of public distraction occurred after the 48 hours.
What?
It wasn't. It was spontaneous. When the information got into the public domain that he had been arrested, sympathizers and supporters of your party, you are a very smart communicator.
Go on.
You said he supporters.
Now look at it.
They were not he supporters. They were members and sympathizers of the MPP.
Okay, agreed. Go on.
Who invaded and caused a lot of destruction to public property and even manhandled innocent citizens who were going about their normal activities. And you celebrated him and poured powder on him.
Okay.
When he was released at your party's headquarters.
Okay, let me give you
so in other words, what you're saying is the NPP has done it and
No, I'm not trying. I'm not equalizing. Nobody should encourage.
No, you are not equalizing.
Behavior that is distracting.
Let me tell you the facts, because I was there myself. I was at the police station. It is normal. If today Dr. Apak is bundled by the police, you would have your supporters, NDC sympathizers, coming to show solidarity. There's no problem with that. And that was what was done in the case of Kennedy Gitmo. I was there myself, well there. Now, when the police had kept him for hours, they decided they were going to grant him bail, as he was entitled to. All of us went through the bail procedures. You had to secure property. You had to bring property that you had title. All of us went through all that process up to 6:15 p.m. Then the police finally said that, well, we can't grant him bail because of orders from above. But if you speak to the police, the records are there. All the police had said, go and do A, B, C, D, so we can grant him bail. All of that was done. And then, in the evening, the police said, we can't grant him bail again. At that point, people felt there had been political interference, that the law was not taking its course. The second time when he was, after he was freed, was because you kept him beyond 48 hours. If you had taken him through the due process of law, what would have been the matter? There would have been no matter. The president said he was going to.
You said
the president
that was
said
done because
he was going to crush him.
Above, order from above.
Yes, that's what they told him. The
How do
president
you
said
prove that?
he was going
What
to
is your
crush
basis for
him.
that statement?
Listen,
please.
President Mahama.
But let's wrap up on this because this came in from the contributor.
President
We
Mahama
were
said he
looking
was
at the
going
Gitmo.
to crush him with a popular maja. Do you know popular maja?
You never said
I don't know
the president didn't say so.
He said he was going to.
Just what the president said so.
What's popular maja?
The steamroller. Then the president said so.
I didn't.
You
I
never.
don't
Oh,
know.
because somebody had said that we shouldn't kill an ant with a
sledgehammer.
Then the President Mama said, "Oh, you are worried about sledgehammer. We are going to crush him with a."
Well, I didn't hear that. But yes,
I'll bring you the quotation.
back to the issue on the table, which is the Supreme Court ruling on the release of the agreement. It's interesting that the AG was going under the State Security Act and saying that, yes, that would amount to putting the security of the states in jeopardy, if you like. So with this now, clearly then it's the if you like, the safe haven of the State Security Act is not necessarily there. You just cite it, but then you need to show that actually it is not. What you're saying about the compromise of the state security is real and not just something that you're putting up there for the benefit of you not disclosing the relevant information, which is a key development in our jurisprudence.
Well, that is sort of interesting. I didn't avert my mind to that, but of course, you lawyers quite clearly, I mean, it is part of your trade, so you pay attention to all the nuanced components of these types of development. But I believe that, once these issues that have been considered in camera, it would suggest to me that there is a balance somewhere that probably would allow for, content that cannot be injurious to our state security to be kept away from the public domain. But, well, the court has spoken, and we have to deal with the consequences thereof.
Very well.
The court is speaking too many times
to
get you to be transparent.
So, yes, again, Mr. Nkomia is raising the issue about transparency. Dr. Park.
But, of course, he's been saying this all day.
Yeah.
And there's no merit to it.
If we are to speak about transparency,
yes.
Transparency should also include personal responsibility. And this should go beyond just a government or a party in power. Asking how transparent his political party has been.
Show us.
Oh, well, your suspended chairman has accused you of a multitude of...
Anyways, let's not go into the litany of issues. We wrapped up on the discussion on the Gitmo 2 agreement and the fact that the Supreme Court had ordered that agreement be released by the AGs. We're moving on now to look at the supplementary budget that was presented in Parliament on Monday by the Finance Minister, Mr. Tekwe. We'll be looking at how the supplementary budget, as presented, addresses our current challenges, doom so amongst others. But before then, I'll take a few messages from our viewers and listeners, and then we carry on. This is Silas Owusu in Kumasi. Says they shouldn't release any agreements, but rather they should release the Gitmo too. As an ordinary man, I'm struggling to pay my tax, and the president is using the tax to cater for them eating food and enjoying.
That's a very interesting
here. And another one says, the fear of contempt is the beginning of wisdom and serenity in our body politic. Kudos to our law lords at the Supreme Court for restoring sanity on our airwaves and bringing back the culture of deterrence. The sentence slapped on the Montie 3 is highly meritorious and would send the right signals to our maverick politicians who think they are untouchable. It's a victory for democracy. This is Idi Muhayu Dean. Good morning. I think the Montie trio should have been given 12 months jail term, and I'm disappointed in the ministers of state who are calling for a presidential pardon. Doesn't mean they support their actions. This is hypocrisy of the highest degree. This is from George in Ofinso. The last one here says, good morning, I'm Adam from Kumasi. I think the Supreme Court was so on the Montie 3, their license should have been taken. Okay, I think it's saying the Supreme Court was lenient on the Montie trio. Their license should have been taken away from them. Thanks for your messages. Keep sending them through and we'll be reading them. So now we'll be looking at Mr. Setepe's supplementary budget, asking for 1.8 billion Ghana cedis to do what he describes as invest in key sectors of the economy and also to run some programs and policies for the rest of the year. Mr. Janto, I'll start with you.
Oh, really? I thought she said you
if you want me to pass, I'll pass,
yes,
and then
pass.
I'll come back to you.
Yes.
Mr. Nana Kumia.
Sorry?
On the budget, the supplementary budget.
You want me to start?
Yes, please.
No
Mr.
problem.
Park says, well, it's coming from them, so pretty much concurring. So.
No. I mean, once the truth is there, it really doesn't matter. Now, the government came to Parliament in last year, November. And said that Parliament should approve 50 billion cedis for the government to spend. That approval was given. The government has come back into Parliament to say that it needs an extra 1.8 million Ghana cedis to spend.
Billion, actually.
So the Parliament is going to debate it and maybe approve. What is in it for we, the rest of Ghanaians? There's nothing in it. The government couldn't. After the 50 billion, they said we should give them more money. So more money. But really, what is in it? Look, this money that we will give to them, what is it going to do? I mean, you still have Dumso? Because Tekpe said that this money is going to turn around the lives of Ghanaians. And he was boasting. Then he was talking about they've done a clinic there, they've done some roads there, they've done a bridge there, and all of that. What is he talking about? This government, Abina, if you tell them you have a headache, they will tell you they are building a clinic at, they are doing an extension at Rich Hospital. If you tell them you can't pay school fees, they will tell you they are doing an interchange at Circle, coming from a Circle. If you tell them you can't pay your rent, they will tell you they are doing some road on the Eastern Corridor. Everything you tell them, they say, we are doing infrastructure, we are doing infrastructure. That's all. As we speak, there's Dumso. After all the 50 billion that was given to you, this 1.8 that you want, there's still Dumso. Education is not funded properly. Even the headmasters are threatening to close down the schools. Since you became an adult and you went to secondary school, when did you have an occasion when all the headmasters in this country do a press conference to threaten that they will close down secondary schools? When? Abina? Do you remember anything like that? You know, unemployment for young people is completely out of control. The government has no program to give young people jobs. Corruption is very active. Even now the president himself has put himself into a conflict of interest situation where he's deemed to have taken a bribe. How worse can corruption get? The cost of living. Cost of living for the ordinary Ghanaian. Sanitation, flooding. Really, if you look, Abinam, the fundamental problems that Ghanaians face. All these 18 billion that the government claims it has borrowed, and it hasn't borrowed more, and then all the money from oil, 3 billion, excess of $3 billion. What fundamental problem in this country has the government managed to solve significantly? Flooding? No. Unemployment? No. The value of the city? No. Manufacturing growth? No. Agricultural growth? No. Agric is declining.
Sorry to cut you, but briefly, if you could tell us, we're dealing with certain challenges currently, and we're looking at
the impact of the
exactly. So, what would you have expected, or what would you have loved to see in this?
I'm expecting to see that all the monies that we keep giving to this government, that economic growth will be better. As we speak, the economic growth rate that we are having now, this year is projected to grow at 3.6 by the IMF. That's the lowest in 20 years, despite the oil, despite the money. Agricultural growth, I'm expecting to see growth in agriculture, because that's where the mass of our people are employed. Agriculture was growing at 7.4 when the NDC came into office. Today, agriculture is growing 0.04 from 7.4. Ghana, the food import bill, when these people came in 2008, was just about 400,000 tons. Now it's increased to 600. So we're importing more food. Cocoa production is declining. Industry is declining. In 2003, in 2013, it grew. Yes, but it's lost value. So since these people came into office, the value of your money is gone down 250%.
Very well, Nana. I will need to bring in.
Why are we running around for? Why?
I'll need to bring in Mr. Jantua
and then they are chopping half the money through corruption.
Dr. Apak. And Mr. Jantua, issues, Nana has raised a number of issues, falling targets and all. Indeed, Mr. Tekpe conceded that in his presentation that certain targets were not met. In fact, he says majority of targets set in the 2016 budget were not met. And he, citing examples to support this, he talked about tax revenues of 11 billion cedis falling by 6.4% to 10.3 billion cedis. And then the cash deficit increased, an increase in the cash deficit to about 2.5% as against the 2.2% target and all. I mean, all those issues there. But I would want you to look at how well we're doing. I mean, looking at this supplementary budget, do we seem to be on track in terms of our fiscal consolidation agenda? Because I think that is one of the things we are pursuing to close the gap.
Agric, employment, and the power sector. Now, most times when the finance minister comes to Parliament to read the budget or supplementary budget, he states, where agriculture is concerned, due to poor weather patterns in the first half of the year with the extended dry season, the agriculture sector has experienced poor growth. Where's the plan? If you know that we have bad weather, it affects agriculture. Majority of our people in the rural areas deal in agriculture. Where's the plan? I would have expected that every season the rains don't come, or the rains come very sparingly. Do you not put an irrigation plan together? Can you not come back to Parliament and say, last year we experienced a low production in plantains, tomatoes, and some of the staple products that we have in this country. So we've put irrigation in place so that when there are no rains, at least we can increase agriculture. Has that plan been put in place? No. And he keeps coming back to ask for more money. More money to do what? To help agriculture? And if you're doing that, how do you help agriculture? Look, I'm vice chairman of the Public Interest and Accountability Committee. The amounts of money that was taken from the oil revenue into the agri sector was used to pay old debts. Nothing new was done. I think this was 2013, 2014.
Some was used to brand buses.
nothing new
You remember?
was done where agriculture is concerned. And the mainstay of our people in the rural area is agriculture.
Indeed, of our economy.
So, exactly. So, what are we doing? What are we doing to help agriculture in this country? Tomatoes is scarce. Plantain is scarce. In fact, just recently, one
finger of plantain.
Finger of plantain.
5 cedis.
Some 1 cedi 50 pesos. A thumb size. 1 cedi 50 pesos. And this is food that the ordinary man buys every day. And if you're not increasing the salary of the ordinary man, where does he find the money to buy simple cocoa and inkatia? Then I come to employment. Really and truly, maybe Honorable will be able to tell me, what has government done? You forget about adult employment and look at students coming out of university. What new employment have we created over, I would say, the 8 years of an NDC government? What kind of employment? Tell me. The private sector, who seem to be the ones who try to create employment, when they go to the banks to get money to invest in their companies, how much interest are they paying? How much interest are they paying? And how do you expect them to grow? And even the banks themselves, when we decide to syndicate, to bring money together to build some of these important installations that we require, are they able to syndicate? So we need to look at all these things to be able to make sure that at least we are heading in a certain direction that brings growth. Now, power. Where are we today where power is concerned? I would have thought by now, with all the emergency, and I say emergency because that is what government made us understand, that all this car power and all, there are emergency units that are coming in. I would have thought by now, would have learned our lesson. Because when government was talking about all these emergency power generators coming in, I expected government to say, we have also secured X amount of money to buy the fuel that will fuel these generators. But you bring them in, and now they look as if they are white elephants, just because currently the FPSO Kwame Nkrumah is not able to produce because of the problems in it. Now, you see...
And there's this thing about the purchase of another plant.
Yeah, well, this is what I was coming to. You have seen the challenges of the FPSO Kwame Nkrumah. We have gone and purchased a new FPSO at Amels to come and do the same job. Where is the variety? You'd have thought, and I remember at the beginning, and I've said this before, at the beginning of the oil industry, when President Kufuor declared that Ghana has discovered oil, some of us told him, we can have troubles using an FPSO. Rather, let's have a mix. Let's try and pipe some of this oil on land. They said it was an expensive thing to do. Are we not piping gas on land? It was not expensive.
He's roughing up to bring in Dr.
Now,
Park. We just have about
if we had piped oil on land, it would create jobs. We can even say that we are piping some to, what do you call it, Tema Oil Refinery to produce fuel for ourselves. It would have created a new industry on land, but we didn't do it. And we don't even know at this present moment how much oil is taken from the FPSO and sold onto vessels. Because everything is done on the high seas. We need to be able to sort this power crisis out. It needs to be sorted out. And for me, I think government should come out and say, now that we know the situation of gas, should come out and say, we have X amount of money for the next 6 to 8 months to buy LCO, to buy other forms of generation fuel so that we don't go through this doomsday again.
Very well. Dr. Park, I would want you to focus on two things: agriculture.
Yes.
Being the mainstay of our economy, and the fact that consistently we've seen a decline in there. And recently in the budget, about 40 million cedis was taken out of the allocation to that sector. Secondly, the issue about our power situation. We know that the situation has to do with fuel security, if you like, and the need to stockpile to be able to have fuel readily to power their plants. So why do we add on to it when we haven't solved the situation with our fuel?
Very well. I think that And our committee has always took advantage of this opportunity to recite the talking points of the MPP, which he himself has put together as Director for Communications.
But if they are facts, then we should
No,
really
they are not. That's the problem. Because some of them, for example, they need to be corrected. I mean, to suggest, for example, that when somebody is complaining about rent, we talk about building a hospital. He knows fully well that, in fact, our government is increasing public housing, and if you like, some of those projects that they didn't complete, we have come to complete them to increase the options and make people have.
But you should know it's perpetual succession.
More yeah, so the point I'm making is that
we have
the point I'm making is that
minutes
yes,
to
we
go.
can talk about the rent, but it is not as though government is not working to create more avenues for people to be able to get a place to lay their heads.
But the rent.
And then he talks about.
So you're addressing the issues you raised before you address
one or two key issues.
Quickly, yes, please.
They both speak about the area of employment generation
and agriculture.
We all know that globally, it has always been a challenge. I don't know of any single country in this world where they have ever been able to say that they have solved their unemployment problem. It's a global challenge. But you see, you have to create a conducive environment for people to be able to be entrepreneurial.
So what is that?
And give them opportunities.
What is that environment you have created?
And you also have to create the conditions that can then create secondary employment opportunities.
So the question,
to
yes.
tell me that
please, yes.
all the time we speak about infrastructure. Those masons working to build those infrastructural projects, are they not being employed and paid?
How much are they paid?
The carpenters who are doing the fixtures, are they not being paid? The contractors and surveyors on the roads, are they not being paid?
What about people coming out of school?
No. Very well. Of course, they also have opportunities.
Where?
If you are an engineer and you have finished KNUST and there is a contractor doing work on the road from Fumbisi to Sanduma.
But we can't always be looking at employment in the area of infrastructure development, can we?
That there are various ways of stimulating your economy and creating avenues for employment opportunities. In fact, when the U.S. went into recession, the strategy that the American government under Obama used was massive investments in infrastructure.
But the economy is not being stimulated.
It's a different economy. People are getting.
It's a different economy.
Do disagree that if you go to the rich hospital which is being built, are people not there working? Don't they get a salary?
But the returns on that is what we're looking at.
I ask you a simple question.
Is it long term?
No,
but that is going to create long-term opportunities.
How?
Because it is going to be a much more expanded hospital
with more
specialized facilities, which is then going to be a basis to employ those graduates who are coming out. Be as it may. Then they also talk about agric. They talk about agric.
Let him land and then you have it briefly before we wrap up.
They talk about agric.
In fact, contrary. You talk about projects and you say it's providing employment. But John Mahama, the president, told us that projects and government touting is an exercise in mediocrity. Now you are telling us that that's what is going to solve unemployment.
It is part of a grand strategy.
But you told us sometime ago.
Let him wrap up. We are almost out of time.
Contrary to the case that my two colleagues are seeking to make. In fact, agriculture sector grew by 2.8% between January to April of this year.
Between January to
agriculture.
April. Yeah, January 2015 to April 2016.
Proof.
But I am telling you, that is what we have presented.
You
have contrary evidence.
We can't get tomatoes to eat.
Do you have contrary evidence to that?
Dr. Park is asking if you have contrary evidence to rebut what he's saying.
But
we know consistently.
And then you spoke about
the agric sector has been declined. But let me take messages, please, before we wrap up. One more thing and then yes.
About decline in cocoa production. We all know the lifespan of a cocoa tree. It peaks, and then after it peaks,
but it should be an ongoing process.
That is why we have provided over 15 million tree seedlings.
Unfortunately, I need to
try and revive the cocoa industry.
Thank you very much, but our time is up.
They can have their critique,
our time is up.
But
thank
it
you.
is not as though nothing
At this
is
point,
happening.
yes, I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Dr. Park.
is
We've
speaking
come to
out.
the end of the show.
The Economic
That's
Intelligence
Dr.
Unit
Park
report
talking,
indicates
and
very
he
clearly.
is a presidential staffer
Oh, you
and
won't let-
a
you won't let me
parliamentary
finish my points.
candidate of Bunza South,
Bunza South.
constituency.
She's tired of you.
Next to him is Mr. Kwame Jantua. He is a senior member of the CPP, also a vice chair of PIAC, and a technical advisor to the Civil Society Platform on Oil and Gas. And on my left is Nana Komia, Communications Director of the New Patriotic Party, NPP. Thank you so much for watching. Today, same time, same place next week. Until then, do have yourselves a very good weekend.
Charge me after.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.